Well, guys, it's hard to believe, but this is episode 200. It seems like not very long ago, I felt like if I could just get 25 or 30 podcasts, I would have a beginning body of work. But here we are, 200 episodes later. And I want to just say how great it's been, how much fun it's been for me to do this. I thought it would be great today to ask a few people that I work with. These are guys that have been listening for a while. Some of them are in my alumni groups to give a little bit of feedback. And I asked them a simple question: which podcasts or what part of the Finding Traction course have been especially helpful for you and why? So today we talked to a few of those guys on Finding Traction. Welcome to episode 200.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, let me say before we get into talking to some of these guys, if you are looking for some free resources, I want to encourage you to sign up for Circle. You can get access to a whole bunch of worksheets as well as listen to the Finding Traction course, lessons 1 and 2. Those are the first of a 52-week video course that you can access through Circle. And also, let me say, if you're looking for a group of guys, we take 5 to 7 guys and we walk together. I lead the group and we walk together through the course. And each week, guys watch the material. They come together, they check in, we discuss the material, and then we connect with each other throughout the week on WhatsApp. Guys have found it super helpful, as you're going to hear in some of these interviews, just in terms of some of the things that people have found helpful in their recovery. If that interests you or you want to connect with me for any reason, I want to encourage you to reach out to me. My email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. All right, so here we go. This is just a few examples from some guys I've talked to who want to talk a little bit about some of the particular podcasts that they have found helpful. Well, guys, I want to introduce my friend Brian, who has been listening to the podcast for a while. And so as I asked all the guys, it's interesting what podcasts are helpful and what podcasts stick with people's memory. So Brian, there's a couple podcasts you wanted to reference. So I'd love to hear what those podcasts were and why they stuck with you or were helpful to you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I even just began to think about the stopwatch that you have in some, I don't think you've talked about it several different podcasts,
Yep.
but the two that I remember, and I've got notes on both of them because they just were so memorable when it was in the last couple of years. So in February of 25, a year ago, Dial It In, number 158.
Okay.
It's like a description of a morning routine. And I'll just go through the steps. I'm not going to read all the details, but the coffee dial is like thinking of your dial on a radio, an old radio. Coffee dial, God, spiritual dial, recovery dial. And I love some of the quotes you have. You kind of ask God, do you still want me to not look at porn? And obviously the answer is yes. But then it's like, okay, but then do I really not want to look at porn? And it was kind of tongue in cheek when you were writing when you were reading those comments, but it hit the mark. And then the gratitude dial, which is so special, and you listed out being porn free, I'm experiencing freedom, not bondage and captivity. I'm experiencing hope, not despair. I'm experiencing clarity, not confusion or brain fog. I'm experiencing confidence, not insecurity and timidity. And there were quite a few others, and
Right.
I've written some of my own. And then you kind of varied from your dial to one rule to rule them all. And this is one that you and I had talked about specifically back a year ago about connecting with someone every day.
Right.
And then the second rule, which is seems like it's as important or more, removing porn ad adjacent behaviors from your life.
Hmm.
And that podcast is so special to me.
Hmm.
I had it on my quiet time sheet of paper, and I mean over on my desk.
Right.
I must have looked at it every week for 9 months, every
Wow.
couple times a week for 9 months, and then another one, which was 20 episodes before that, number 137, relapse after a long sobriety, two ditches to avoid.
Hmm.
And it just rang true in my own life. And not lately, but back then it rang true. Either catastrophic thinking um, or minimizing. And then
Hmm.
he just described some of these, and I'm not going to go through the details because my time's up, but just that one I've got notes on, and I carried it in my pocket. I've got it
Well,
folded up here, but I carried it in my pocket for inspiration. So thank you, Vern. We've been friends for quite a while.
yeah. Well, let me go back for a sec because I forget what I need to remind myself of. Can you just remind me what those two ditches were? And just
Oh,
a quick
yeah.
explanation because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going now,
yeah.
what were those ditches again?
The catastrophic thinking, which I mean, I think I probably go into that one more, just
Right?
kicking myself about how stupid I was, and
Hmm.
literally, that's the dumbest
Right.
thing. You shouldn't have gone into that a relapse after a long sobriety. And then your comment was, if you've done it once, you can be successful in recovery again. Build on your successes. Look at what you have achieved.
Right.
And then the other one was minimizing, just kind of, well, even though it's a major relapse, just, yeah, whatever.
Yep.
So, and then you listed off some, I've got, three more pages of stuff that you wrote. Embrace the regret, ask yourself the right questions. Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay.
It was a special one for me. And not only for me, but I felt like it was one I could minister to friends
Yeah.
because I'm talking to guys periodically, and they're like, "Oh gosh, I blew it this week after such a great victorious time," and that was one. Well, go listen to Vern's 137, relapse after a long sobriety, two ditches to avoid.
Well,
But
and then
dial it in's the number one. That's
oh,
for me.
okay.
That's
And what I love of working with you, Brian, is you are now working with a younger set of guys. And as we all know, the fact that we're not just consuming recovery, but we are a conduit or passing on. I think that's one of the real things that has consolidated and solidified your recovery because I know your story now. You have young men looking to you. And boy, that makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think Matt's the one who said at Dobshoot says
Yeah.
it's recovery fatigue. You avoid that if you're
Yes.
helping other people. And
Yes.
it's not the only reason to help other people, but it's certainly an inspiration
Yeah.
to keep your recovery strong. Because I'm going to be talking about my own recovery,
Mhm.
sharing positive examples from my life. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes negative ones, but hopefully mostly positive.
All
Anyway,
right.
appreciate the work you do. And it's hard to believe you have 200 podcasts out there.
I know. When I was trying to get 20, my wife said, you just need to come up with a body of work. I'm going, well, I guess that's a
You,
200-pound body or something. So,
you've got it now.
thanks again, Brian. God bless.
Sure. God bless. Bye.
Well, I want to introduce another one of my great favorite guys from down under, and he is just going to share a little bit of what podcast stood out for him. So, Mr. Matt, wax eloquent.
Thanks, Vern. I've had the privilege of doing the whole course
Mm,
with Vern and being in alumni groups and traction groups with him. And I still remember, I mean, we started 6.5 years ago. We
wow.
were on this journey together. And
Yep.
I still remember bits and pieces of the course. And probably the two things I use often from the course, one is the stopwatch analogy.
Okay.
And I often think about that. And the one, though, that has been the most helpful to me in my recovery has been playing the tape forward,
Hmm.
asking myself, what would this look like if I engage with this right now? What's this going to look like in 2 hours? What's it going to look like in 2 days, 2 weeks, two
Hmm.
years, 2 months? And so, though, that's been one of the most helpful things from the actual course itself. For me, there's lots of great podcasts that episodes that have been done over the last 200. A couple of them stick out. One is you got to eat your frogs.
Eat
Got to
your
eat your
frogs.
frogs, man.
Okay.
Do the hard work first. Now maybe it's just a Canadian thing with the French influence. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, frog legs are a
for,
big thing in Quebec. Yeah. Yep.
for some reason that has always stuck with me. And so whenever I get to doing something difficult or having to make a decision I don't want to make or have a conversation I don't want to have,
Okay.
I'll tell myself, I got to eat my frogs.
Okay.
I got to do this first and get this done with. And, uh, and then I'll feel a lot better about myself and I'll be able to move on with it. The other one that was a lot more recent than that, but that's really stood out to me was the one on arousal, where you challenged us that arousal is not something that happens to us, it's something that we engage with.
Hmm.
And whilst that's not necessarily something that's super, whilst that is not necessarily something that's super groundbreaking, it was a really good reminder to
Right.
me that I need to be present and be actively engaged in as I'm scanning, as I'm driving down the road, as I'm walking along the shopping center, as I'm doing lots of these things, so that I am not just letting arousal have its way with me, and so that
Hmm.
I'm actually actively saying no. I'm going to choose not to be aroused by this.
Yeah.
And so those are probably the two podcast episodes that have stuck out to me the most, the ones that I remember,
Hmm.
and the ones that have probably had some really good, valuable, practical tools that I still use to this day.
All right. Well, I hope to come down to Australia and we'll go out for frog legs, if that works.
We'll
So,
try kangaroo first.
okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Vern.
Hi there. I'm 61 years old and have been struggling with a porn addiction ever since the internet came into my life. That's almost 30 years. I have had periods of sobriety and recovery over those years, but nothing really definitive. And before the advent of the internet, I struggled with lust, masturbation, and sexual fantasy. Internet porn became my go-to when my imagination ran out of content. It had also become my drug of choice when I became bored with life or suffered from any number of negative emotions that I would try to deal with on a regular basis. Because my addiction was so strong, I honestly felt like I would never be able to break free from it. The biggest hurdle, though, was my own pride. I knew I had a problem and I desired to live free, but I had this mistaken belief that if I tried harder, I could break this cycle and the bondage that held me so tightly in its grip. That's where the Finding Traction course and our men's weekly meeting became the bondage breaker for me. The most important thing I learned right away is that this battle for freedom cannot be fought alone, especially if I've been isolating myself from others. How desperately I needed other men for encouragement, strength, and accountability. The Finding Traction course brought us together in a powerful way as we all related so well with one another, and the course material and the need to incorporate all these things that we were learning into our daily lives. So here are just a few of the takeaways that I learned from this course, and I call them my 4 R's for a successful recovery. Number 1 is realization. I had to come, by God's grace, to the realization that viewing porn had become an addiction, and it was destroying my soul, separating me from God, and damaging my relationships, especially with my wife and all those closest to me. I also had to come to the realization that these chains of bondage, because they were so strong and powerful, that I could not break them without God's power and the help from others. It is merely impossible for me to be able to recover from this alone. And oh, how I tried, and oh, how I failed so many times. Lastly, I had to come to the realization that if I'm only 99% in, then I'm 100% out. A rock-solid commitment to the course material and earnestly applying it to my life was essential. The second R is responsibility. I have to take full responsibility for this addiction, as it is the result of accumulated bad decisions I've made along life's journey. There's no room for blaming others. Secondly, I have to take full responsibility to make the necessary changes in my life and to be 100% willing and committed to do whatever it takes to find freedom and recovery. Lastly, I have to take full responsibility and hold myself accountable with trusted others, such as a friend, family, pastor, or a group of others who might also be on this recovery journey, and be willing to meet with them on a regular basis. The third R, restoration. I have to restore my relationship with God by confessing to Him and repenting of this destructive lifestyle of viewing and masturbating to porn. And I have to restore my relationships with others by confessing to them also, especially my wife with whom I have betrayed, and to seek her forgiveness. The last R, radical amputation. I must be willing to cut off all sources of porn by installing accountability, filtering, or blocking software. Also, I must identify the times of the day when I'm most vulnerable and remove internet access. Lastly, I must delete destructive social media apps that are causing triggers which can lead me to a relapse. So I'm really excited to now be involved in helping other men travel this road to recovery. I am currently leading a small group of men once a week, so I get the benefit of doing the Finding Traction course all over again. This recovery journey is indeed on a road, sometimes smooth and it's sometimes bumpy, with a dangerous ditch on either side. But what a difference this road to recovery has made in my life. A life that is free from bondage and shame, an abundant life, and a confident life which God has always intended for me to live. God bless.
Hey, Vern. First of all, congratulations, sir, on episode 200. What an accomplishment, sir. And just want to share real quick the two podcasts that come to my mind. I think the first one that really stands out to me was I was actually on your podcast on episode 144, Porn Free Millennial. I just want to share that because you've opened the door for me and so many other people. I think one of the biggest things with porn recovery and when we're looking at our lives differently and we're living it differently is once you get to a spot where you can start helping others. I think that's a huge part of recovery is being able to help others, to give back. And you've done that in so many ways, and that really inspired me to start my podcast. And it was an honor to be on your show back in October 2024 and just be able to share some things that were working with me. So I first just wanted to thank you. That podcast stands out to me just because it was such an honor for me to be on. And I think it really shows just the kind of person that you are, where you want to open the door. You want a big tent of guys in recovery that are working to better themselves, better their lives, and to break free from porn. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And then episode 194 really stands out to me as well because Matt Dobschutz has been a big figure in my life as well. I know, Vern, we've known each other for a couple of years. I've worked with you individually within groups and then been on the podcast. And same thing with Matt. I mean, Matt was that initial podcast that I listened to that really started my journey about 8 years ago. I worked with him individually and then in group settings. And then I actually got to know Vern because Vern was helping out with the groups. And that's where we started to really connect. So episode 194, I love just because it's like my two guys I looked up to, mentors in this space, this really important space that we're all in. And just talking about Matt's 15 years of freedom, that really stood out to me and like what he was talking about, the metaphors that he was using, and just hearing both of you, just your chemistry, talking with each other, about like what's working, like what are some new things Matt's working on and focusing on. I just love it. I look up to both of you. I think you both do an amazing job. And I love the Finding Traction podcast. Highly recommend it to anybody. I don't miss an episode. And I think the work that you do, Vern, is fantastic. And I just wanted to leave this, like we actually had a chance of meeting each other last year in person in Reno. We did a little retreat. And again, that was a neat moment because sometimes, you get to know someone through their podcast. You don't really quite know who the person is when you meet them. And I'm telling you, Vern's just who he is on the podcast, a great man, a great mentor, somebody to look up to, and somebody that has some great insights that can really help us on our journey. So with that, episode one, episode 194 and 144. Check them out. Much love, everybody. And Vern, great job. Keep it up, sir.
Hey, Vern, I just want to start off by saying congratulations on episode 200 of Finding Traction. I've been listening to Finding Traction over the years. I'm also part of Band of Brothers. And as I reflect on all of your episodes, the one that stands out to me is episode number 184. How long does it take to quit porn? And the reason that episode stands out to me is I remember when I started in my journey for sobriety, that was one of the questions that was on the forefront of my mind, of my thoughts, that this was an area of struggle for me that I've struggled with for a very long time. And I didn't know how I was going to find sobriety, how I was going to find traction, how I was going to find a way out, because it was very discouraging. It felt like there was no hope. I felt like giving up, and I didn't know how I was going to be able to string together a series of days and sometimes a matter of hours of sobriety. And when I listened to that episode, it just reminded me of where I'm now in my walk for sobriety. And some of the information that you shared in there just really resonated with me, that for each individual, their path is unique. It depends on how long this has been a struggle for you. If there was prior trauma in your life, what kind of supports are in place. And as I reflect on my journey, the one thing that I wanted to share is one of the things that's really helped was listening to your podcast and Finding Traction over the years, being a part of a sobriety group, the Band of Brothers, having accountability partners to check in with each week, and learning tools for recovery, learning tools for my sobriety. And over the years, as I've been on this journey, it's caused a mindset shift for me. Initially, I thought of recovery, if the best analogy is like being in a car and driving from New York and trying to get to California. And every time I would have a setback, I felt like I had to start back from New York. And I had a mindset shift in my walk, in my sobriety walk, where I started to realize that the information that I gained in group on podcasts or my accountability partners, the steps that I made in recovery, that there are times when I would have a setback, or would have a slip, or would have a relapse. But it's not starting back from zero. It's a detour. And the miles, so to speak, that I've traveled along the way to get to that point before the detour, those miles matter, right? That information and knowledge that I gained there matter. And it's now finding a way to get back on that path and to continue moving towards sobriety, moving towards long-term lasting recovery. And I just want to encourage anyone who's listening to this podcast right now and feel that that's a question that's pressing them right now. I would share from my story that this was not an overnight procedure. This was not an overnight process. This was something that took time. This was something that took nurturing, that took vulnerability. It took me giving myself grace and patience and having individuals around me to support and encourage me in this walk for sobriety, this walk to overcome porn and porn behaviors. So for any of you out there who are listening and that question is coming to your mind, I want you to know that just keep on pressing forward. Just keep on with your commitments towards sobriety, your commitment towards lasting recovery. Find an accountability partner or supportive group. Find connections. And don't give up on your sobriety walk. There are times when you may have a detour, but keep on pressing forward, because just like I struggled and I had detours and I had relapses, but now I've had lasting recovery, and I feel that just like how I was able to do it, you can as well. So be encouraged.
I want to share a little bit about my experience with sex addiction and what recovery has looked like for me. For a long time, this was something I carried quietly, mainly because I didn't fully understand it. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't fully honest about it either. I would minimize things, I'd tell half truths, and convince myself I had more control than I actually did. But going through the Finding Traction course with Vern was a turning point for me. What made it different was that it wasn't passive, like it required work. It forced me to slow down, reflect, and actually put words to what I was dealing with. It helped me understand not just the behavior, but the root of it. But what really changed things for me was moving into the alumni group. That's where accountability became real. I realized quickly that I could only go as far in recovery as I was willing to be honest. And honesty meant more than just not lying. It was meant being fully transparent, even when it was uncomfortable. Early on, I was still holding back. I was still telling partial truths, the same patterns I had lived with for most of my life. But then something clicked for me. I asked myself, why would I lie to the very people who are here to help me? Why would I hold back from the guys I'm grown to love and trust? Guys who actually understand and want to see me grow. That shift changed everything. These men have held me accountable, but they've also lifted me up. They've shown me grace. They've forgiven me. And through that, I've experienced what real brotherhood looks like. They know me deeply, honestly, in many ways, as much as my wife does. Not because I'm hiding things from others, but because this is a space where real conversations happen. This isn't surface level talk about sports or weather. This is real life, real struggles, and real growth. And that kind of environment is powerful. It taught me that recovery isn't just about stopping a behavior. It's about becoming a different person, a more honest man, a more accountable man, a man willing to step into the light instead of hiding in the dark. I'm incredibly grateful for this journey. And I just want to say thank you to Vern for the work you're doing and for being faithful to what God has placed on your heart. It's making a real difference in my life, and I know it's making such a huge difference to the people that you've worked with, but those that are listening. So thank you.
All right. Well, this 200th episode, I want to introduce my friend Dave. We've had people in this podcast from Australia, from the deep south. Now we're going to the northern highlands of Scotland. And my buddy Dave, just a fun fact, Dave was the one who did all of the video work for the Finding Traction video series. So, Dave, welcome aboard 200th. What stood out to you?
Oh wow! I mean, so many things. I was looking through all the lists of episodes, and there's so many things, but a couple of episodes in particular that really jumped out was episode 100, which
Okay.
is slot machine porn.
Oh,
And it was that whole idea of when we're on social media and it's like just the kind of the endless scroll and stuff keeping coming up, and just how dangerous that is. And after kind of doing the Finding Traction course and having some success in sobriety, it felt like that was the thing that kept pulling me back in every so often.
Okay.
And just I found it really, really helpful to kind of like phrase it as that like slot machine of just like, oh, let's just see what will come up, because it almost gives you license just to be like, well, I'm not really looking for anything. And that was a really helpful way just to kind of unmask actually what was going on under the surface. I was hoping that something will come up. And I think as well, you said in that episode, Vern, about just having some like alternative activities, like kind of low effort things that you can go to instead,
Right.
like, because there are moments when we just need to unplug and switch off. And so
Yep.
doing, reading a book or like a puzzle or something like that is kind of ticks that box without you getting into murky waters. And so I found that a really, really helpful one. And then the other one that popped out as well was Wife Size Sex, episode 49. Really helpful just picture of, wanting to, with my relationship with my wife, kind of like build something where I'm not bringing this over sexualized kind of artificial kind of like energy into our relationship, or this expectation of like, oh, we're gonna have sex, like,
Right.
loads and loads, and it's just but just kind of bringing in this kind of like porn kind of like brain to it. Like, I find it
Yes.
really helpful just to be like, no, the goal is to have a sexual relationship where it's like it fits our marriage,
Right.
it fits us as a couple, and there's like a really healthy rhythm within that. And so, I mean, as I say, there's loads, but those were two that just kind
Okay.
of stood out to me as like really helpful insight.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dave. Let me talking about slot machine porn. Let me bring in Sin City here, the Vegas man, Jim, and Jim. Great to have you
Welcome to
on.
fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. And I just have to say overall, it's hard to pick a Vern class because they're all pretty good. But I know I was wanting to tease him, but I just can't do it now that we're live. I've taken multiple people through his class as a teacher,
Mm.
and everybody hates lesson 9. Oh my
Oh,
gosh. It's just a
right.
horrible thing. I don't mean to make you guys feel dread when you go through it, but you probably should. You
Okay,
know,
lesson 9. You got it. What is lesson 9?
Lesson 9 is going through your whole sexual history, everything you've ever done everywhere. And I remembered it all in order and clean and going
Oh,
through it and cleaning stuff up. And it was so intense. At
yeah.
one point, I said, Vern, hey, I could throw up right now. And I literally
Hmm.
could throw up right now. I said,
Yeah.
I was going to throw up. You said, all right, let's stop here. And right. Gosh, I remember that so clearly. And then you sent me a little trophy.
Hmm.
We took lesson 9 and burned it and put it in the trophy, and it was such
Right.
a moment, and I still have that to this day. Of course I do. Um, but what I really want to say mostly, besides all the stuff, because I know you wanted me to pick a lesson, and how could I not pick lesson 9?
Yeah.
Horrible. If I could delete one, that's one I delete, of course. Um, but I would say that my wife said that this is the best times of our marriage.
Hmm.
Processing it
Wow.
and going through that. She said, this is the best part of my marriage was the Vern stuff. That's when the things really took off and really,
Hmm.
really a lot of, because a lot of the joy came in. Because what I always say is, I know it sounds silly, but fun that we've had going through this,
Yep.
you get a lot more fun is the oven that joy cooks in. And I think that when you work through some of those issues and some of that stuff, that your joy reestablishes and it comes through
Wow.
fun.
Well, that honors me. And the fact that you would, and the key thing is that your wife would recognize that. That's the real litmus test. So thank you guys. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dave. Great to have you guys as part of our alumni group. Again, we're going to call this the last of the interviews. So guys, it's been a joy. Hopefully I have another 200 in me. It's hard to believe we got this far. So again, stay tuned and let's continue on in our recovery. God's blessing, guys. See you later.